Attention, please. Eastern Airlines Flight 19, now ready for departure.
Welcome aboard the Walt Disney World Express monorail. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we're entering the vacation kingdom of the world.
There's enough land here to hold all the ideas and plans we could possibly imagine. We call it Epcot. Will be our experimental prototype city of tomorrow.
Welcome to another episode of the Retro Disney World Podcast, taking you back to the vacation kingdom of the world, the way it was, and the way it is in your memories.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Retro Disney World Podcast, the official podcast of the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society. I'm your host, Todd McCartney, and this is episode 77, part one of Wonders of Life, which will be a multi-part series over the next few months to take us back to an amazing Epcot pavilion. So, but sitting in with me as always as we record today, Mr. Hal Bowers. How you doing today, Hal?
Aloha. I am doing well, thank you.
I think I have one location left in my little list for you, by the way.
Oh, I can't wait to. This better be a good. Since it's the last one, I'm sure this is going to be the best.
I don't know, but
ever.
I haven't mentioned it here. The City of Champions.
Oh, yeah.
So you've had some championships recently.
We've had some championships. Let's see. We got that Super Bowl thing.
You had that.
That World Series thing.
And the hockey.
And that Stanley Cup, too. Yeah.
Couple of Stanley Cups there.
Yeah.
And coming in from another sports city there is Mr. Brian P. Miles. How are you tonight, Brian?
Greetings and salutations. I don't have a whole lot more to say, except I understand the Philadelphia Phillies are in the hunt, as they say, for a wild card spot. But that's about the extent of my sporting knowledge right now at this time of year.
It's about the extent of our ESPN updates, as usual, too, that are not timely. After they don't age well, but that's okay.
Right.
And coming in from Ohio, the rubber city capital of the world, Mr. J.T. Kuzier. He's back to school. The kids are running amok. He's serving all sorts of wonderful delights in the cafeteria and helping out. How you doing tonight, J.T.?
I'm great. I'm making sure they're not running amok. No running in the halls.
Okay.
Slow down. I do have a new idea. I'm going to make a legend of myself, and if I catch a kid walking, I'm going to give him a crisp $1 bill and let the legend spread. So if I see you walking, it's $1.
Wow.
You know? Yeah, you never know. You might get that. And I really only have to give out a few dollars, and then the legend will grow.
So that's interesting. We have this thing called Falcon Bucks. At
character cash. It's
exactly, where they give out.
But I'm going to skip that. I'm going to give real dollars.
Real hard dollars that they can spend on
candy.
Well, I had to do this. If that was for me, how old are these kids? What grade are they in?
First and second.
Okay, so I'm gonna go 1981 here for myself. So you would carry around a quarter, a nickel, and a penny for me. So it would have been 31 cents with our inflation calculator. So
there you go. So I mean, it's this is a nice little thing. But we're going off the sports. We don't really have a lot going on. Although the Guardians are apparently doing good. They're still the Indians to me, and I'm ready for Wonders of Life because this was one of the places I spent a lot of time in my first visit to Epcot.
There you go. And how you're going to be taking us through this. And I'll tell you, I want to thank our listeners, too. We took a little brief hiatus there for about a month. Everybody was very busy traveling. Myself, JT was getting ready for the school year. How your children were in camp and you were traveling. Brian traveled. So
I travel back and forth to the pool every day.
So it's glad to get the group back together here as we get into the fall season. So we've got a boatload of things to do for you. But as always...
Now wait, before you start, can I just note, we started this, was it a fall thing or a spring thing when we started this? The first episode ever. Was it like a May or like a fall?
It was in November, I believe. So it was a fall. So we're coming up.
Getting close to how many years is this starting now?
I always forget.
Like I'm imagining this is like the beginning of season.
We're close.
8, 7.
Well, we are in our 8th year.
That's insane.
Yeah.
So just so you know how this works, JT, next year we'll celebrate Epcot's 40th.
Got it.
And then the following year we will celebrate our 10cennial.
Oh. Okay.
How about that?
Get excited.
And then we retired. Just kidding, everybody. Just kidding, everybody.
So I'm really curious when we publish now number 1 because I'm
the first episode.
Yeah, hold on. I'm going to have it here in a second.
I recall getting on and saying, "Are we just going to demo out our equipment?"
Yeah.
You said, "No, we're recording an episode." And I said, "Oh my God, we are."
Preview episode was November 12th, 2014. And our
So
official first one came out November 23rd, 2014. Yeah, so
I got my numbers
yeah,
right,
he was
man.
right on target.
I'm on top of this.
So we're coming up on the 9th year. Unbelievable.
So yeah, that's and 77 episodes later. That's all right.
Yep, we're there. All right. Well, JT,
and only I think 37 of them are on Horizons.
the How Bowers special will continue in 3 weeks. Part 6 and 7. You still promise people a pleasure on part 4. So I mean, they're
and Alien Encounter.
Well, that's true. We do always.
Yeah. Okay. We'll do it. We'll do it.
We do. So
we owe them a lot.
Yeah, a lot of work to be done yet. All right. Well, JT, we always dip into the mailbag. A lot of people writing us since there was a lot of time here between episodes, but certainly got a great number.
Yes, the pool is closing soon, Brian. So let's dip our toes into the mailbag.
Well done.
First one. This is actually we're going back to July when it was a brighter, happier time. This one's from Lindsay White, and Hal actually discussed this with Lindsay. But this is a good question because people, might be doing this and they don't know. Lindsay basically, she is just got her master's in engineering back in May. Congratulations! She wants to become an Imagineer someday. She's a younger listener, but she is really curious about pin trading. She wants to know the history, how it started. Her and her parents were talking about this, and they just were curious, what's the deal with that? And by the way, Brian, she made the trek from Philly every year to Disney, and said, "Go Flyers to you." So, what did you tell her about pin trading? Because I actually knew the answer to this one. I recently learned it, but go ahead.
So here's what I found out. I did not know because I have very little interest in pin trading, but it is a huge thing. So I thought maybe we should find out about it, right? So I looked into it, and it turns out, I remember pins have been sold in the park for years, the close-in-A pins, but it wasn't really a big deal. Like pin trading wasn't the huge thing that we think of it now until the Millennium Celebration at Epcot. Walt Disney World's merchandise department actually spun up an entire division specifically to support pin trading. And in fact, even in that first year in 99, they actually released 400 pins to like sort of grease the wheels and get it started. They sent people out to events to see like what the pin traders were doing at other places. Like I remember back as far as like the Olympics and thing, that was a big deal.
I was just going to say the 96 Olympics, there was like the Coca-Cola commemorative pin set. That's one thing that I vividly remember.
Yeah, and I think that goes back a long ways. It's like people would come and bring a pin from their country, their sport, meet somebody, trade it, and then by the end of the the Olympics, you could have pins from a bunch of different people.
Also, I guess we should speak briefly about the origin of those pins. Were generally prior to that regarded as lapel pins, and men primarily would wear them on their suit lapels. So they exist going back 100 years before that, but they would usually be either corporate related, like you'd get a pin for your 5-year anniversary, or for doing business with someone, you'd get a Coca-Cola pin. Or I used to collect them when I traveled until I filled up first the jewelry box got filled with them, and then I filled up canvas. I bought some blank canvas at Michael's Arts and Crafts and just stuck them all on there. So I had a ton of Disney ones. I wasn't a pin trader, but whenever I would travel, I would pick them up I had a Disneyland Paris one, and from tourist attractions all over the world where I would stop pre-millennium. that was like a simple thing to collect, as opposed to shot glasses or spoons.
I remember the Hard Rock Cafe ones were popular when people would
Yes.
go
Yeah.
to Hard
Yeah.
Rock someplace.
I remember I bought a number of pins from Epcot. I think I got most of the pavilions and a few others, and I had a picture frame. I didn't go out and get the velvet like it sounds like Brian did, but I remember pushing them through a picture frame, like the cardboard in it, and then putting the glass on top and smushing it. And I had that on my wall. Yeah, I think I arranged them kind of like in the order that they were around the pavilions at Epcot. So,
Do you still have it?
I did take it apart a number of years ago, so unfortunately it's... Yeah.
Well, I gave all of my Disney ones, which comprise 3 small little canvas things that are set up free to do paintings. I just found they were a cheap way to... I bought a block of 10, and they were a good way for things that you pin to just stick in there. They were a good way to display those things because I didn't want them in the jewelry box anymore. And so I gave all my Disney ones to my niece, who one year for Christmas, who does collect like Disney pins and stuff, and all of the assorted other ones, which are from like, I mean, I have odd ones like, Mount Vernon or, James Madison's Ashlon Highland Estate and stuff. Like anywhere I visited, I would buy one in the gift shop because they were easy to throw in the bag and it was something to have. And then I used to wear them when I used to wear suits a lot more. I used to pick a different pin all the time and wear them. And now they just all went into a canvas thing and sit on the floor.
So that little hole in the suit thing is specifically for pins.
That's what it's for. Boutonnieres.
Yeah, I'd say it's more. Boutonniere.
Any kind of display. But yes, that's where you put it, is in the slats in your lapels.
I was wondering what that thing was for. Thank you, Brian.
That's what it's for. You can put your pins in there, or a boutonniere, or a fresh flower.
In case you need to beat a man with a red carnation somewhere.
Pen, anything you want to hold, anything you want to keep cool.
But if you're amazed by them making 400 of them that first year, the reason, as Todd will tell you, is they're extremely cheap to produce.
Oh, yes. Yeah, you're talking at the quantity that Disney produces them, you're talking pennies. So the markup on pins is phenomenal.
It's disgusting. Some of them too. What, $15, $20 a pin?
Oh, those are costing them under $1 to make.
And it's also the reason why there is a giant fraudulent market for the Disney pins.
Yeah.
So that eBay and all that, like they actually go, guys go out and get 5,000 of the most desirable ones made and then list them on eBay.
Anybody can have any pin made these days. I love how Disney tried to put the Mickey ears on it to show it's a hidden Mickey and it's an original Mickey pin. Anybody can draw 3 circles. So
you've never seen me try to draw.
That's right. But we will say now that the truth is exposed, we've made pins before, and thank you very much for your donations of a few dollars to get that pin, knowing that they're relatively inexpensive. But we don't pay pennies, but we pay a low price.
The real value is in the art and the memories you make along the way.
Yeah, and these are Hal Bauer's pins a lot of times.
We still have a number of the whatchamacallits left. That's our last set of pins to go. Of the Poisson type or whatever.
Remember when we were in the Utilidors, Todd, and they showed us the pin trading station for the cast members, and they were like, all you pin traders, you're going to freak out, because it was like you could walk up as a cast member and pick any 20 pins you wanted for your pieces of flair and then wear it on stage or whatever. So
yeah.
So I guess we should also mention that the big ass hat, the Mickey Sorcerer hat, although it wasn't originally designed for that, it was included as part of the 100 years celebration of Walt. It's like eventually that became a pin trading station after the multimedia elements were removed, the touch screens. Of course, there's the huge pin trading thing at Epcot Center in the middle of Communicore. And then at Disney Springs in the old Lake Buena Vista shopping center. What was the Captain's Tower became a huge pin trading area. Like it started out small, and then eventually all of the sides of that hexagon became pins. And did they do a special pin place at the Magic Kingdom, or is it just kind of spread out all over? I don't
remember a specific spot.
Oh, we'll get emails from the pin traders, but yeah, I'm not sure what that location. It should be noted that the hat in which was Hal was referring to in Disney MGM Studios at the time, that was paid for out of the merchandising budget and not from the parks and attractions budget. So it was there to sell things.
Nice. And if anyone's interested in a full and complete rich history of pin trading, there's actually a wonderful video on YouTube done by our pal Stephen Miller, who was in charge of the pin trading. And he actually went back to the group of people that started it all. And it's a incredibly wonderful and comprehensive interview with those folks where they go into the origins of it in great detail. So there will be a link to that in the show notes, so you can go and get the full history there. It's really, really something.
Cool.
All right, thanks, Lindsay. Hopefully that helped you out. Good luck with the master's degree and all that. Here we go. Next one is from Chris. Chris said he just finished listening to episode 75, the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids episode. Couldn't help but notice your background music was Ray Lynch's Deep Breakfast songs. My parents had picked that tape up at some point in the mid to late 80s, and it became a regular part of the road trip mix. But I had always made this mental connection to Epcot with it, and I think the Wonders of Life Pavilion because it was the ambient music played there, perhaps? Am I remembering that correctly? And if so, do you know if Disney commissioned it or it's just licensed? After re-listening to that album on iTunes after your podcast, I couldn't help but think the entire album sounds like 1980s Future World.
Man, he is right about that. That music was used in so many places. When New Age music became popular in the mid to late 80s, it got used as background music in Tomorrowland, in Wonders of Life, in the Honey, I Shrunk the Kids movie set Adventure Playground. It was everywhere. And those songs were not written specifically for Disney. Those were released as albums, and they would put together a group of songs from artists like Vangelis and, I'm trying to think of some of the other people. Ray Lynch, which was one that we mentioned. I'm trying to think. Like Behind the Waterfall was
Behind the Waterfall
on everything. But there was a whole new age trend. I remember there were even like new age light jazz radio stations.
Oh sure, smooth jazz 106 here in Philadelphia.
Yeah, we had, I think it was the Dove down in Florida, in Tampa, St. Pete. But yeah, you could listen to that music like nonstop.
Did they use any Yanni in the parks?
Possibly, yeah. That sounds.
Or how about Zamfir and his pan flute?
No, but Andreas Wallenheimer definitely got used.
Who wrote the theme of the Illuminations Millennium? I think that, or Reflections of Earth. One of those is very, very similar to Yanni, and it was definitely came from that late '90s time frame.
Oh,
do you know who that was?
I believe that was all done by Don Dorsey.
Yeah,
Don Dorsey. Okay, it just has that Yanni feel.
It was, that big, especially when he started getting in with orchestras and they would mix, the guy with the synthesizers with the orchestras. Like, didn't he do a thing like Live at the Acropolis? That was a huge.
Oh yeah. Yanni did that.
Yeah, then
we featured. We had a little clip from him on one of our past episodes too. I won't do it again, too, folks. Don't worry.
It always comes back to Yanni.
Retro WDW podcast live at the Acropolis. Now we have something to really shoot for.
There we go. Save them frequent flyer miles.
On our Greek tour.
The World Showcase country that never was.
Well, thanks, Chris. Right on point with today's episode. You just look at that synergy. All right, next up, here we go. This is from Peter. Peter coming in hot with a good question, which I don't know if any of us are going to know the answer to. This could be I don't even know if anybody elsewhere does, but Peter wrote in and said, this may seem like an odd question, but I'm just wondering what the maximum speed of the Carousel of Progress is. Long live the Buffeteria.
Somebody had, there was a statistic on that once.
And like theoretical or operational?
Well, I mean, he did say he, had a joke going with his brother. He said Bob Gerd probably sitting there going, how fast can we get this thing going here?
Yeah. At some point, They probably got it up to where it was just throwing people out of the doors.
The gravitron of progress.
It's a rotor machine.
So there is some statistics on it that it's 2 feet per second.
All right, let's do a little math here,
to
Todd.
miles per hour. So let's just do the count. That's 1.36 miles per hour. But of course, that depends on where in the radius you're sitting, right? Because you're technically going faster on the outside than you are on the inside. So, you know.
Oh, so people that are on the inside
are moving slower.
If you're in the front row of the Carousel of Progress, you actually finish the show before the people on the outside.
It's like it turns into a time machine then, because you're clearly.
Well, it is a time machine. You go forward, you go back in time.
That
you go
is
forward.
true, anyways. You're right.
So yeah, I mean, really, when you think about it, the people at the back there moving faster are actually aging faster than the people at the front. So it's just
that is true.
Yeah. That old experiment, right? Sending 2 astronaut twin, one stays on Earth, one goes up.
Yeah, we compare then.
Yeah. All right. So I want somebody to ride the carousel for about a year, and we'll see how when your twin can sit in the front, and we'll see how you're different.
We had a guy in Geauga Lake here. He rode the rotor every ride. It was the one, where the floor dropped and it spins real fast. Every ride, he was on there every year. He was known as the rotor guy.
So every day he just rode the rotor?
That's it. Every time he went to Geauga Lake. He was the rotor guy.
I mean, that's as good as
he's got his own Facebook page. I don't think it's his, but people, he was like a legend at Geauga Lake.
It's almost like the professionals that they call themselves at Dave and Buster's. That just sit there and
he was a professional.
He was a professional rotor.
I would love to medically know what that consistent level of G-force does to your internal organs. Like, does he have a flattened spleen or something after all those years?
He's got a really straight spine, I heard.
Yeah, it's just...
Oh, my gosh. Well, Peter, maybe we got a cast member out there listening and is like, one night in 89, we really cranked her up. That'd be we'll see here. Grad night, 1990.
There's got to be a huge motor under that thing, right? I mean, you need a lot of torque to get it started.
The gearing is really impressive on that, I'm sure.
I know it's supposed to be on railroad,
and you can go under tracks. It, can't you? I think I've seen pictures from under it.
Well, I think it's based on a railroad roundhouse turntable concept.
Which are extremely well balanced, and you can turn a locomotive just with a few people moving. I mean, they're precision engineering.
And certainly those full-size locomotives of the past, those old steam locomotives, weight-wise, would probably be in line with a fully loaded Carousel of Progress. So
sure. All right. Well, thanks, Peter. We'll let you know if we get any updates on that one. Next up is Jimmy. I loved this email, Jimmy. He says he just finished watching or listening to the 4th of July TV special podcast. He worked on that show in '88. Everybody.
I love this.
He was a grip and a post tape op. He said he later went on to produce and direct some of the parade specials in the 90s. Just so you know, it was common back then to shoot many of the celebrity short segments throughout the year. Anytime a celebrity was at the park, we would grab a video crew, ask them to say Merry Christmas, Happy Easter, or whatever we might be could use in an upcoming special. They were usually just written on cue cards, and the celebrity would quickly read them off. Often, there was little to no prep, and we'd just shoot them wherever they might be in the park that day. For the 4th of July special, he remembers the entire show was pre-recorded. Sandy Patty was live, though. The satellite truck was located at the Magic Kingdom, but the editing was done at the media production offices behind Epcot. While the Hour 1 tape was airing, we were still editing Hour 2. We finished it, and it was raced over to the Magic Kingdom with just minutes to spare before it went live. He really enjoys the podcast, and his wife has attended the last 2 Retro Magic events, and they really love them. He says in the 90s, he was a director on the Mickey Mouse Club, as well as many other projects at Walt Disney World. So he's our new guy, 83 to 2000. We're reaching out to Jimmy.
Yeah, I can't wait to try to talk to him about the production stuff that went on at Disney MGM, because that's one of my little favorite side things. So talking to someone who actually got to direct the Mickey Mouse Club, Justin Timberlake and all those people. I mean, beyond the celebrity thing, I just find that's fascinating. And so I know we'll get some good stories if we can start talking to him.
Yeah, thanks, Jimmy. Appreciate that. All right, one more to round us out. Here we go. This is from Bill. He says, hello, podcast. Does anyone know what happened to the life-size marionettes from the former carousel at the end of El Rio del Tiempo?
And boy, I started to look into this, and Bill and I went back and forth a bit, and I think the answer is we don't know.
Yeah.
We
They're all in Shelby's garage.
we know a lot of the stuff from that ride of significance was tagged, magged, and taken away because there were a couple pieces that showed up in the Bowers Museum exhibit of Imagineering. Quetzalcoatl in his human form was there.
And didn't he go to Graceland afterwards when the Disney Archive exhibit?
Yes.
And I suspect he may be in Philadelphia next year when the Franklin Institute exhibit for Disney's 100th starts.
Yeah. So I suspect, I don't know if they would have kept the figures, but they certainly would have kept the costumes and archived those because those were gorgeous. I doubt they would have kept the whole carousel. When we were talking back and forth, he had heard a rumor that Michael Jackson actually bought them after the ride closed, and that would have been about 2 years before his death. So I don't know. It never showed up in any of the funny. There were a bunch of like auction catalogs of like things that Michael Jackson used to have that he doesn't need anymore now that he's passed away, and we're going to auction it off. And none of that stuff showed up in there. So who knows? It could be in Tito's garage.
This is Tito. Oh my gosh. Michael Jackson, he always comes up. It's like
And
Tom Cruise,
yeah.
Chest of Drawers, Roy's Cab. It's just it always comes around with Michael. Well, that's going to do it for the mailbag. We appreciate all the letters. Write us podcast at retrowdw.com. Any questions, comments, stories? We love a good story. If you had anything to do with Wonders of Life or anything from there, let us know. We'd love to feature that on part 2, 3, 4, or 5, however long this goes. And we are done with the mailbag.
All right. We're going to take a step back to the very, very early days of Wonders of Life, and we're going to talk about how it formed us, and we're going to talk about things that didn't quite make it, because we've spoken to Rolly, we've spoken to a lot of people who have worked previously on the Wonders of Life, which is sadly no more. For our listeners who don't know what the Wonders of Life of where it is, it was between, oh my goodness, everything has changed. I would say between Universe of Energy and Horizons, but now it's between Guardians of the Galaxy and space. And
it's still there.
It's still there, yeah.
You can see it. Yeah,
Gold Dome has been
refurbished
over the years, and I think it was supposed to become a play place of character meet and greet after, but it's kind of that. It's been in limbo for years. I went in there, I don't know, 6-7 years ago for one of the flower and garden events. They were hosting different things like how to pot a plant or something like that, or pick up your free pumpkin seed over here. So that was kind of neat.
Did you get the pumpkin seed?
I think it was either that, maybe it was a fern, something like that. I forget. But how I don't know if we're going to do it tonight. We have a very big myth to bust that we've gone through some very technical details and discussed a lot of things. We're going to talk
Is that tonight?
I don't know.
We'll do that on the next one.
Next
but
episode.
I'm very anxious because I'm very anxious when we get to that.
Oh, it's gonna be fantastic. All right. Well, yeah. I'll quiet down here and simmer myself here and let you. Hal's going to be leading these episodes. So Hal, ahead of time, thank you for your research and due diligence on this. But let's turn back the clocks to what year? Where are we going back?
I think we're going to go back to 1976.
Wow.
The bicentennial. It's a good time for wondering about life, I guess.
I guess so.
Back in 1976.
So a pavilion dedicated to the topic of health appears in the earliest literature describing Wedd's initial ideas for the Epcot Theme Center, Epcot Institute, and satellites. So remember back at this iteration of Epcot, this early one, when it was supposed to be like the theme center was like where you'd learn about stuff. There was the Institute where like you'd have conferences and people would talk about ideas. And then the satellites were like, oh, we'll have a solar energy plant over here and we'll have this kind of thing over there so you can go out and see live demonstrations. Well, in this earliest iteration of Epcot, a health attraction would have been part of the community pavilion, which along with science and technology, so you had the community pavilion, the science and technology pavilion, and the arts and entertainment pavilion, as well as Communicore. And those four things together would make up Epcot Center. The 1976 prospectus created for potential sponsors describes it like this. The Community Pavilion will present future concepts in education, health and medicine, and the various and vital components of the community, economics, planning and design, and government services for people. So, as the Epcot Theme Center became Epcot Center after being famously pushed together with the then separate World Showcase project, conferences were held with top minds in health and medicine to define the information that the pavilion might share with audiences. Imagineer Rolly Crump, known for his work on the Museum of the Weird, It's a Small World, and Walt Disney World's Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, was brought back to work at WED after he'd gone off and done his own thing for a little while, and he was made the show lead on the project, with Dr. Charles Lewis, the professor of health services, nursing, and family medicine at UCLA's School of Public Health, acting as the chief consultant. Now, Dr. Lewis was a nationally and internationally recognized scientist, physician, and researcher who made important contributions to literature in public health, preventative medicine, nursing, and healthcare delivery. He also served as a member on the Council of the Institute of Medicine and the National Academy of Sciences from 1978 to 1980, so he was a big deal. And he was chair on the board of healthcare services of the Institute of Medicine from 1981 to 1983. So as they say, he was top men.
Top men. Put a top men on it.
It was Dr. Lewis who came up with the phrase that would become Rolly's philosophy for creating attractions all throughout Epcot Center. If it's a ton of fun and an ounce of information, you'll reach the teachable moment. So that was Dr. Lewis's deal.
I remember Rolly telling us that too in
Yes.
our interview. That teachable moment portion stuck with Rolly his entire life. And to this day, he still talks about it, which is great.
They were figuring out a new way to deliver an attraction experience. Pirates of the Caribbean wasn't trying to teach you about the history of pirates. They were learning Epcot and how best to present that information. And it's, I know Hal's going to go through this, but it's just so interesting that the pavilion that didn't get built, really the ethos for how they did all those attractions came from the work on this pavilion.
Yeah. Very, very, very true. As the research phase of the project went on, Rolly became frustrated by the infighting and lack of consensus among healthcare professionals. He wanted to make the pavilion's messaging as broad as possible to appeal to the corporate sponsors that Disney was approaching. Finally, Dr. Lewis told Rolly that doctors and scientists could agree on what he called the 8 health habits. Although the exact list is seemingly lost to history, as best I can tell, the 8 health habits were 1. Getting adequate sleep, 2. Eating a balanced diet, 3. Exercising regularly, 4. Not using tobacco, 5. Light to moderate alcohol consumption, 6. Good dental care, 7. Practicing mental health, and 8. Having access to health care. So Rolly took these 8 habits and developed the majority of the pavilion's attractions around them with the help of fellow Imagineers Frank Armitage and Walt Paraguay. Together, they came up with the designs and plans that would be shopped around to potential corporate sponsors. In the completed model of the pavilion, the building had a large circular center with 2 wings extending on either side, which contained show buildings. These wings were obscured by a berm and waterfalls, with a central pathway leading to the entrance that opened into a courtyard with a fountain in the middle. A restaurant with a large outdoor patio was located on the right-hand side of the path leading to the pavilion, which presumably served healthy foods. So it's funny, there's a lot of elements here that are kind of dropped in that you'll see in the final version of Wonders of Life later on. And you'll notice it's like there are some commonalities. Even though this whole thing got thrown away, a lot of this stuff ends up coming back.
Also, that restaurant with the outdoor terrace comes to Communicore.
Yeah.
When they built was a Stargate, right?
Yes, absolutely. That's actually a good point, Brian.
Occasionally I make them. Don't get used to it, though.
The Life and Health Pavilion appeared again on a large model of the entirety of Epcot Center, used in a 1978 press presentation hosted by Card Walker and Florida Governor Ruben Askew, minus one of the show building wings, and looking, for lack of a better term, more biological. I really don't know how to describe the building. It has a lot of sort of like droopy, goopy, and things like, I don't know. It's sort of Gaudi-esque. I'm not sure how to describe it. It's really interesting. We'll put a picture in the show notes for people to see. The restaurant was moved closer to the pavilion's entrance, and abstract spires and circular domes became the prominent features on the building's exterior. A painting of this model also appears behind science fiction author Ray Bradbury in an often published photograph from this era. So there's a picture of like Ray Bradbury kind of like leaning behind what looks like a model of the Epcot Center. And it's actually a painting of the model of Epcot Center, which I've not figured out why they decided to make a painting of the model, but they did. During this time, the attraction names were reworked and the interior was restyled. So you're probably wondering what was inside this thing. And surprisingly, a lot of this is going to sound familiar to anyone who's visited the Wonders of Life when it was operational. In the 1978 version, after you walked into the pavilion through a foyer, in the 1976 version, after you walked into the pavilion through a foyer, the center opened up into a large circular room called the Great Midway of Life, with doors along the outside edge leading to different attractions. The area had a fun atmosphere that evoked the sense of sort of the fun and the energy of a classic carnival midway, with a bit of a psychedelic feel thanks to the influence of Walt Paraguay's art style. Very much sort of like the carnival atmosphere that we got in the final version that got built. Disney's publication stated that the pavilion would teach guests, quote, the lesson that good health is based more than anything else on their own responsibility and behavior, unquote. And this theme was reflected in the first two of the pavilion's attractions. At the exact center of the pavilion was a spinning Care of Self carousel featuring sculptures representing the eight health habits. Now, I think this is funny that we're talking about self-care in 1976, and this is something that I'd never heard about until maybe 4 or 5 years ago. That here, this concept had been out there all the time, just people not doing it. Rowley knew, but we didn't. Maybe that's why he's lived to be as long as he has, and he's still so active.
That's right.
Yeah. Close to that was the Good Health Habits, an animatronic show that explained the 8 health habits in more detail. So once guests understood these habits, they would be ready to experience individual attractions throughout the rest of the pavilion that reinforced them. So another one of those attractions this cracks me up. It was originally called the Bet Your Life Gambling Hall, and later was renamed the Casino of Health. So this looked like a gambling casino, like a Las Vegas casino, with custom-made health-related games of chance. The model shows what appears to be slot machines, roulette wheels, and wheels of fortune. And in Jeff Heimlich's book, It's Kind of a Cute Story, Rowley describes a specialty shooting gallery attraction where guests would stand in front of a shooting range, like representing an activity like swimming or running or riding a bicycle. And then under each one of the activities, there are a variety of healthy and unhealthy foods for you to target. And when guests shot a particular kind of food, like an apple or a piece of cake, a computer screen would display how long it would take for you to burn off the calories from the food that you shot by doing the corresponding physical activity. So an apple might take an hour to work off, but the cake might take 3 days. So it was illustrating for you like the choices that you made when you're eating food and exercise, and like how those things corresponded to each other, which is a kind of a really good way to like just put it in your face and like have you understand, okay, I make a choice, these are the consequences of my choice. And all of the games in here would be giving you an opportunity to pick something and then showing you either the positive or the negative consequence to yourself for making that. And I think the idea is like once you were done, you would think like, oh, I should probably take better care of myself and not do something to sabotage myself. So it's a very nice, fun way to do that. The next attraction was originally called the Head Trip, later became known as Brain Command. And that puts you inside of the mind of a human, commanded and staffed by animatronic figures. And this show was supposed to be the mental health component. Now, if you've been in Wonders of Life, you probably have figured out that this is what became Cranium Command.
Right.
So this idea of a theater with little guys inside of your head showing you stuff dates back to 1976. And it wasn't until 1989 that it was actually built.
That's so. I mean, this just proves again. We've said this time and time again. Like the old ideas just never go away, right?
Yep.
They're just shelved and they come back at another time when you least expect it.
Right. So
Well, it only took them 15 years to build the pavilion, so
That's true. We had to find another corporate profile that would give us some money. That's it.
yeah, this next one kind of cracks me up. The original version was called the Theater of the Mouth, and it was later renamed Tooth Follies. And guests sat in a theater, sort of in the tongue position, surrounded by teeth. So when you sat in your chair, there were literally like teeth hanging from the ceiling and from the floor around you, as if you were inside this big giant mouth. And then there was a screen out in front of the teeth representing the outside world. And so you likely would have, there's a lot of information about it, but guess you probably would have learned about good eating choices and dental hygiene in this attraction. But can you imagine sitting inside of a mouth, like as stuff walks around outside of you? It just seems so creepy.
Halitosis.
Oh yeah, you could absolutely do that.
You could have the wisdom teeth. You could fall into the hole where the wisdom teeth used to be, and
so many possibilities.
so many possibilities.
Yeah. So next up, this was a pretty large area. This probably took up about maybe a third or so of the circle. Sensory Funhouse, a walkthrough exhibit filled with full-scale optical illusions and other sort of mental trickery. And sure enough, there was a Sensory Funhouse built in the Wonders of Life Pavilion, although it was just like a small little exhibit that you would walk up to, and we'll talk about that in detail when we get there. But it's funny that this idea from way back when continues today. There were to be two major attractions in the pavilion. One, not surprisingly for early Epcot, was a film. It was titled The Joy of Life, and Disney described it as the beauty, dignity, and strength of a man from birth to the golden years. But really, I think sort of the key attraction was something called The Incredible Journey Within, which was an Omnimover-style dark ride where guests would get shrunk down to a microscopic size and take a tour through the human body, much like Disneyland's Adventure Through Inner Space took guests through the microscopic world of atoms. So it is literally sort of the human body version of Adventures Through Inner Space.
Yeah, which begot Body Wars.
Yeah. So the development of The Incredible Journey Within was led by Imagineer Frank Armitage, who actually has a fascinating backstory. He was originally from Australia. He got a book or something about Mexican murals and absolutely fell in love with the way that they looked. He traveled to Mexico to learn mural painting, eventually immigrated to the United States, and he was hired by Disney as an animator on Peter Pan and Lady and the Tramp. With his painting skills, though, he eventually moved to the layout and background department with Disney Animation. And in their department, he worked on films like Sleeping Beauty, Mary Poppins, and The Jungle Book. So during this time when he's working on those movies, he began taking classes at UCLA on anatomy and medicine. And he ended up revolutionizing the field of medical illustration. Originally, a lot of medical illustration were just like diagrams and charts. And it was, that stuff with it looked very flat lit, and there'd be like, oh, here's a sheet of cellophane with the esophagus on it, and you pull it back and then you can see another thing. Well, he took a totally different tack from it, having worked on backgrounds and theme park attractions and stuff. His stuff was more like putting you inside of the body as if you were surrounded by it, and less like you're just seeing a cutaway diagram. This was kind of radical for the time. This work led him to become a production illustrator for the 1966 film Fantastic Voyage, in which a team of scientists are miniaturized in a submarine and placed inside the body of a defecting scientist who has barely survived an attempt on his life. The crew must make their way through the body and reach his brain, where they have to destroy a blood clot that threatens the defector's life. So, has anybody seen this movie?
I have seen it. I also saw Inner Space.
Oh, Inner Space.
In 1987
Fantastic.
with Martin Short. And so either one of them is a good good comparison to what they were going for.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. So Harper Goff was the production designer on that. So the ship, the Proteus, so like he designed that stuff. It's funny, a guy that designs 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea submarine ends up designing all the stuff for Fantastic Voyage too. And it was directed by Richard Fleischer, who was also directed 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and a bunch of other Disney action movies. So there's definitely like a Disney connection with that movie. So the incredible journey within would take guests on this trip through the circulatory system, heart, lungs, and brain through a large-scale, anatomically correct, immersive sets in an Omnimover-styled vehicle. The design of the car changed several times through the attraction's development. It started out looking kind of like a red blood cell in the early Blue Sky artwork. You've probably seen that painting before. Eventually, it starts to look like a higher capacity version of the Journey into Imagination wedge-shaped cars with multiple rows. Rowley noted that while in the brain, that passengers would experience a brainstorm, and the car would become more like a mild roller coaster with some fast dips and turns. So you would start slow, and then you would hit the section where it kind of like sped up, sort of maybe a little bit like Splash Mountain, where you're in the and then it hits the roller coastery part, and then you get to go a little bit faster. Now, I don't know about you, but I think this attraction would have been both magnificent and terrifying. Could you imagine like walking the track at the end of the night before closing with all of these like giant blood vessels and lung things and like how do you dust and clean that? Like
you need to call the Franklin Institute because they have the giant heart there, right, Brian?
You do have the heart you can walk through.
Which... So that's who the first pair of people I would call. How is the janitorial, custodial work on the heart?
Again, I'm sure this is in your notes somewhere, and I'm stepping on your toes here, Hal, but this ties into Body Wars.
Right.
And the experience when you hit the bloodstream and it suddenly becomes a thrill ride.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny, that exact path of like from the bloodstream through the lungs and the heart and the brain, like that's literally all lifted from Fantastic Voyage and taken and into this attraction and then taken into Body Wars. So it's so funny. It's just, it was the new hot iteration, and probably a lot cheaper to turn it into a simulator than it was to build these sets full scale. And I try to imagine like, with that time when Wonders of Life was shuttered and sat there for 10 years, I'm trying to imagine what condition like this ride would have been in, just sitting behind a plywood wall, like rotting away. It seems so weird. I read some chatter when I was doing research from this, from some people that may have been attached to the project. And they said that one of the problems that they had was trying to figure out how to get people into and out of the body, like just conceptually, because I think there was a couple of ideas of like doing stuff like the mighty microscope to kind of shrink you down, but there was really no way to pull you back out. And so people were concerned that people would make the sort of the connection of like when you were leaving, it'd be like getting pooped out, like you're in the digestive tract and coming out. And so I don't know, they felt like there were some problems with it, but it's amazing. The model was like very fully fleshed out. And I know in Martin's videos, he's got a storyboards and like a bunch of concept art that was done for each one of the rooms. So it seems like it was very well thought out and just, never got built. So Rowley made the sales pitch for this pavilion to a number of sponsors in the pharmaceutical and medical fields, flying to New York from California on a Sunday evening to present the models in a rented space in the RCA building on Monday morning, and then returning back to LA that evening. And Rowley told us a story about how the president of Pfizer, Gerald D. Laubach, loved the concept, but all of the company's money was tied up in Ireland, and Rowley had no idea what that meant. So I looked into it, and along with Brian, and so what we found out is that in 1969, Pfizer was one of the earliest pharmaceutical companies to invest in Ireland, and they opened a food chemicals plant in Ringaskiddy in Cork County in Ireland. But Brian pointed out probably the more prevalent thing is that in the late 1970s, Ireland was becoming a tax haven for multinational corporations, entering what is called the Celtic Tiger economic phase. There are all of these things. There's this accounting stuff called the double Irish arrangement or the Irish sandwich, which I am completely unfamiliar with, but perhaps someone like that deals with economics can explain this to me. It's something like this. So Pfizer uses transactions between companies within its own group to allow the Irish subsidiary based in Ringaskiddy to buy the rights to patents developed in the United States and then use them to sell drugs that are sold back to the US affiliates. So even though these Irish affiliates pay like $3.2 billion in royalties, the higher prices at which Pfizer imports the drugs like almost wipes out all of the profits like that you would get from this, like the extra on top. And then also the functional tax rate in Ireland is like 12.5% versus more like 30 or 40 in the United States, or back then it was even higher. But apparently the way that you can write things off, like you would end up with like a real tax rate of more like 1 to 2.5%. So there's these accounting kind of processes that you can go through to like make sure that you pay your taxes in Ireland versus the United States. And the tax rate is very, very low. And in fact, this accounting practice is still used today by many, many, many major corporations, AT&T, Apple, Facebook, like almost all the tech companies have some sort of subsidiary in Ireland and then like funnel all of their profits through that company in order to avoid paying like large taxes. And I guess during the Obama administration, they like wrote some of the tax law differently to try to cut some of that off, but it still happens today. So if any of our listeners are like really good multinational tax professionals and want to explain this to us, please send us a letter at podcast@retrowdw.com.
We are not moving to Ireland, also I should just confirm.
We should, if you have not, I don't know, Todd, maybe you should consider moving to Ireland so that way we can, do better. I don't know. Anyways, long story short, they were never able to sell this concept for life and health to a company to put in Epcot. So like I said, this pavilion is in the 1978 model in the position of where Journey into Imagination ended up going. Supposedly Disney felt so confident that this would get built that they actually started some production of some of the set pieces. Apparently there were some giant cells made and things for the Omnimover ride, but they just couldn't get it across the finish line. And by 79, Kodak had signed on, so they put Journey into Imagination in that spot. They hung on to it for a while. They continued to hope to do it. There was an article that I found about Wonders of Life, and Barry Braverman says that in the 1980s, it seemed like it could get sponsored by Humana, who is a hospital management and health insurance company in Louisville, Kentucky. But they could never reach an agreement even back then. The spokesman from Humana actually confirmed that they were interested in the pavilion, but they couldn't find anyone internally that knew why the deal fell apart. Braverman said that Humana really wanted to stress medical technology instead of health, like heart transplant kind of things, but Disney didn't feel that would be as entertaining as just a general, health pavilion. So it wasn't until, oh my gosh, a confluence of MetLife and Tishman and Epcot resorts blowing up, that I think that's ultimately what brought this group together and made Wonders of Life happening. And we will talk about that on our next episode.
So much, gosh, so much to go over.
Yeah. And I want to give a shout out to, Jeff Heimblick for his book. It's Kind of Cute Story. To Ted Linhart and his website, disneydocs.net, for access to all kinds of early Epcot documents that I got to pour through in order to find this stuff out. And of course, Rolly Crump for allowing us to interview him. Huge thanks to Rolly. What a brilliant mind, fun guy. Like, he's the whole package right there.
Yeah, when Rolly invited us into his home, a couple of years ago now. My gosh, that was what, 2017, 2008?
No, 2019.
Oh,
so
okay, yeah, that's right. It really was. I mean, the guy's got a brilliant mind. As we mentioned earlier, he's remembered so many different things over the years, and I just think all the different things that he had, and I'm glad that we're able to share some of those clips again here of the different things he said, because that's a whole episode in itself. We could just let the interview run.
Well, and even the carnival games that you talked about that he initially had for the health education stuff. I mean, drawing on the fact that he had just finished Circus World for Ringling, the theme park attraction experience in Florida. Raleigh's a great example of, I forget which of the episodes of the Tony Baxter where we talked about his obsession with Wizard of Oz and crystals, and how all of that ended up playing out in his designs for the land. I think it was in a land episode that we did, and ultimately some of it coming to pass in Journey into Imagination. And with Rowley, you see those themes again and again and again and again, which will, as we get into the final pavilion, his influence looms large over it.
So, How, I appreciate you putting this together. I know people are saying, "What? We're done already? We're done already?" But there's a lot.
We didn't talk about the attractions.
They're like, it's only been an hour. I'm used to your episodes going for an hour and a half and 2 hours.
But if we started here, it'd be a 3.5 hour episode.
Right.
So.
Right. So this is like a prequel.
Exactly. So we're gonna get there, but let's talk about a couple things that are in the works. I think by the time this is hit, I'd love to put out some information about something that we're doing. We always do an ornament, so there will be a holiday ornament coming out. And I guess the only thing we could say about this, we could say it's the greatest of all time. Wouldn't you say, Brian?
Yes, I would agree with that.
I think we'll end it there, right?
Hint. I like that hint. I like that hint. It'll probably be out by the time this episode's released.
Depends on how quickly. Yes, we're waiting on some things to come through. But as always, any ornament or different thing that we do for donations, you can get them at lbvhhistory.org/donate. And you've got a lot of Wonders of Life episodes here, so I'm sure the wheels have been turning and the gear and all that. You got some ideas for something?
Oh, you mean merchandise-wise?
Yeah, merchandise.
Oh, yeah. I'm gonna have to come up with something.
Wonders of Life, the condom. Wonders of Life, the hemoglobin. Wonders of Life, the.
We're gonna have a lovely set of syringes that are.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wonders of Life, the biohazard bag, right?
Wonders of Life, the actually, gosh, why haven't they cashed in on this? You could do,
it'd be fantastic.
Blood glucose meters and all kinds of things.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe one of the ornaments we could do is just some red blood cells on little little fishing lines that hang on your tree or ornament.
I can't think of anything that would be more lovely to wake up for in Christmas morning than like a large intestine strewn over the Christmas tree.
That's the garland. We do have a lot of foot. We have a lot of length of gut in ourselves.
I think funny.
A couple red blood cells and the vehicle, floating in a little crevice of the Christmas tree.
It is so weird. Like, all of this stuff is like, strikes me as like kind of disgusting. Like, the medical illustrations are incredible, and like I'll put a link to a movie that that Frank Armitage made, which again, it's so neat, but at the same time you're just like, oh, they're like, I'm inside someone's stomach. This is kind of gross.
I think when we'll certainly talk about that when we get to the, talk about the attraction, but they certainly did it in a way that was, I mean, yeah, we'll talk about how you could be queasy with it too, but they kept the blood out of it in a very good way because you were so tiny. How could you see blood?
That's true. You weren't surrounded just by like red the entire time.
Right. So, the crossover would have been great with Martin Short, though. Can you imagine that, Brian? If he didn't do Making a Me, he actually did. They could have really pulled that together.
Well, we figured out he was in 3 or 4 different attractions.
Yeah.
There's no reason there couldn't have been a fifth.
Right. I mean, Inner Space with Martin Short, that would be fantastic. So anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself here, and I know we've got a lot to do before we get there. But Hal, again, thank you very much for doing that. So, and thank you to all of our listeners. Please keep writing into podcast@retrowdw.com. We enjoy all your letters, and JT's got some stuff to do. We'll keep him busy. Sending that stuff out. And if you can, check out our merchandise at retrowdw.com/support us. And we will be back relatively soon. We're going to do another episode coming up shortly as well. So don't go anywhere. You'll see a new one pop up in your favorite podcasting app. We're back. It's fall, and we'll get a couple new episodes out to you. So thank you very much to everyone. Gentlemen, thank you tonight for your time. And as always, Brian, take us out.
Follow the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society on Twitter and Instagram @LBVHistory and on the web at lbvhistory.org. For all things Retro Disney World, including exclusive merchandise, visit us on the web at retrowdw.com and on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook @RetroWDW. And follow our hosts, Todd McCartney, on Twitter @WDWMS, Hal Bowers on Twitter and Instagram @GoAwayGreen, JT Cougar on Twitter @LS1JT and on YouTube at Rubber City Motoring and on the web at rubbercitymotoring.com. And you can find me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram @Brian P. Miles. Retro Disney World is the monthly podcast of the Lake Buena Vista Historical Society, a nonpartisan, nonprofit, tax-exempt 501c3 organization and is not affiliated in any way with the Walt Disney Corporation or any of its subsidiary or affiliated entities.